Again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us today. Our agenda is to get everybody caught up with where we are currently in terms of final budgets and the final award notification. We will also talk about making reimbursement requests, procurement requests, and then how those impact the inventory process that we will have to monitor and maintain. And then in our final segment, we will introduce the staffing request process. I know many of you are interested in that and how that's going to work, so we'll be covering that today. If you have questions as we go along, if you could put those in the chat, that would be appreciated. Nicole is one of our assistant directors. Nicole is going to monitor the chat box, and Nicole, please interrupt me if there's something we need to address, or if if we can hold a question until the end, that would be fine as well. It's a little more difficult with a group this size to monitor raising your hand and actually asking a question. We may have time for that as we get towards the end of the presentation, but as we're going along, if you have a question, please feel free to put that in the chat. Okay. So the first item that I want to talk about is the final budget approval process that many of you have accomplished and have gotten that in and approved, working with our program administrator, Elise Crisp, who will be on in just a few minutes to talk about those budgets. As you know, we were able to provide an increase in the per pupil allocation that required you to go back and rework that budget to get the total amount of the award that we want to make available to all of the non-public schools that qualify. So we've got amended budgets now from all schools who have indicated that they are participating. I think there's 135 total, I believe, 134, 135, something like that. And we just have a few outstanding issues that we're getting resolved with a couple of those schools. And once that is finalized, that will go to our divisions of budgets and financial management to create the final notice of assistance/service, and that will be posted on the KDE website. If you have been on the KDE website to look at where those awards are shown on our Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools webpage, over here on the right-hand side, the EANS Notice of Assistance/Service was your preliminary award notice. That will be updated with the final amount on your approved budget and reposted here. You'll probably want to keep a handy copy of the page that refers to your particular school. Your auditors may want to refer to that, and in the event that the feds want to audit us, we may need to tap one or two schools to participate in that, and we may need you to produce that award as well. So don't let that get away from you, and we'll get that updated here in the next couple of weeks or so. Also, we have asked each participating school to provide a signed assurance document to KDE. We have so far gotten in about 70 of those. You do have to have both an approved budget and a signed assurance document in order to have any requests for reimbursement or procurement to be processed. We've had some schools submit requests where we didn't get an assurance document. I have reached out to those schools directly and gotten those in the very same day, and we're able to move those requests right along. So if you can help us out a little bit and remember to get that signed assurance document in prior to submitting the request, that will help things move along very nicely. Okay, so we're going to talk about the request process first. This diagram is a graphical representation. You know, they say a picture says 1,000 words. This is a graphical representation of the process that is kicked off when you, the non-public school, sends either a request for a reimbursement, a request for procurement, or, as you will learn later today, a request for staffing. On each of those forms, which you find on the KDE website for EANS, the EANS program, on each of those forms is the mailbox to which you send your completed request. And those mailboxes will be monitored by staff here at KDE. And if we have a problem with any part of your request, we will be in touch with you directly to get that resolved as soon as possible so that we can get the process moving along. The first thing we're going to talk about today, if you can sort of track through on the green boxes here, is the reimbursement process, where the non-public school submits a request for reimbursement that goes into the KDE mailbox. That reimbursement is picked up by our program administrator, Elise Crisp, who will validate the request based on what you put in your amended budget. And she's going to talk a little bit in a little bit about that in more detail, how we validate those requests based on your budget. And once the request is validated, she will then forward that approved reimbursement request to the folks in our finance division who actually will do the payment. But the first hurdle to get through is making sure that your request aligns with your budget. So at this time, Elise, can I turn the screen over to you?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I've talked to so many of you, and it's been interesting and exciting work since I came on in June, and I have appreciated working with you all. And I'm going to start today with just a general budget because I'm still getting some questions about what is reimbursable and what is procurable here in Category A. I get questions, I had 3 today in column B about what's the difference between 1 and 2. So I very quickly want to go over that, and then I'll go on to what the next step looks like. So in A, I think there was a newsletter that went out, and it's also been on the EANS website since March 19th. These categories here, some are reimbursable, some are procurable only. 3, procurable only unless it's a portable air filter. 4, procurable only. Then we skip on down, 9, procurable only. 12, procurable only. So what that means is that USAID decided that you all need to procure that through the state agency, and that would be us. So that means you would use a procurement form, and we'll look at one of those later. Now, reimbursable categories are all the other categories. You have reimbursements for things that you already acquired probably last school year. That goes in 1. Then as we look at this person's budget, the school's budget, when we get to newly requested assistance, that can be either reimbursement or procurement depending on which category it is. So if it's a category allowable for reimbursement and you haven't bought it yet, but you want to buy it, then yes, it's reimbursable. Ed tech, reimbursable. I get that question quite a bit too. It's these here, these redeveloping instructional plans, and also your staffing request, which is going to be discussed later, procurable only. And then as I mentioned, the 3 and the 4 categories. So I just really wanted to do that briefly so that that might clarify some. I've had these conversations with some of you individually, and you said, oh, okay, that helps a lot. So now let me see. I'm going to stop sharing that one, and then I'm going to go back and share where you all are. So, and I know this is probably too small for a lot of you to see. I'm going to move it around some for you. So when you finish your budget and you received the approval blurb that said, here are your next steps, you go to the EANS website and download your reimbursement request form, if that's what you're requesting in the categories that are allowable for reimbursement. Now, this request form is a little bit older. We've redeveloped it, but St. Thomas was Johnny on the spot, and I appreciate Father Kelsch Father Ross letting me use him as my guinea pig. And and he would be able to tell you that we did have to go back quite a few times, and that's okay. The thing that will help you not have to go back and forth with me is if you could have your budget open on a second screen or a split screen, and you make sure that these amounts in here match down to the penny what you're requesting. So you can see his request for his desks, his 14 desks and 22 student desks, his shipping and all of that. He had it line itemed at this price, and then it matches here. So I will green that out. As you can see the green bar here, I'll green it out, meaning it's good to go. And then at that point, I will sign off on it. And as long as it has the receipts that are necessary for it, or it's got some documentation to it, I will send it on to budgets, to Allen Cold Iron's branch, and that's when they'll start processing. And Kay, is this where you wanted Allen to talk some, or did you want me to say anything more? Or do I have any questions in the chat?
So I think we're okay with your part of this now. If you'll hand it back to me.
Yes, ma'am, I will do it.
In the reimbursement payment process, our financial people will pick up from the COVID reimbursement mailbox here at KDE. They'll pick up that request, and they will review the request for the appropriate supporting documentation. And they may need to work back with the non-public school to request an additional notice of payment or something additional that will allow us to verify that, two things are important. One is that you actually have the items that are indicated that need to be reimbursed, and that you have actually made that reimbursement. So once we've got that information, it will be put into the state accounting system, and that generates a payment to the non-public school. Now, it could be that the item that you are being reimbursed for is an asset that needs to be tagged for inventory. Those items are any items that are $500 or more, and any technology items that connect to a network, any laptop, any computer, server, any of that kind of thing, regardless of cost. So at this particular point, I'm going to ask Allen to talk a little bit about the request process and what constitutes, let's see here.
Okay, we have a couple of questions regarding budgets. Do you want to go ahead and cover those?
Yes, if there are questions regarding budget, please.
Okay, we have, when is the final date to have budgets completed?
Okay, I'll speak to that one, Kay. So you had to have your final request for assistance in by June 15th. The budget is going to change during the course of the EANS project as you submit requests. Now, it probably won't change much with requests for services you've already purchased because your receipts will be down to the penny on those. But there might be things that you have gotten quotes on for procurement or quotes on for things that you want to buy in the future, 2022, that kind of thing, where the price may change, and then you'll have to go into your budget and make sure that it mirrors your request form. So you may have to shift some money from one category to a next in the things that were already approved. But if you have questions about that, I am the one you would reach out to. Send me an email and say, you know, if you want me to help you with it, I'd be happy to take a look at it and see what it is you're trying to do specifically. Were there any other questions, Nicole?
Okay, we've got one more. Once our budgets are approved, we are still able to procure those procurement-only items since we don't need the state to procure those for us, correct? They're asking.
No, that's incorrect. The state will procure procurement-only items for you. You can buy things that are in the reimbursable categories. Please don't go buy something in a procurement-only category and then submit a receipt. You have to submit a quote for it and request procurement. And I think Alan will talk a little bit about what that process looks like. But yeah, there's a difference between procurement and reimbursement here in this project, and I want to make sure that that's clear. There are categories that are reimbursable, and they're on the EANS webpage, and there are categories that are procurable through KDE only.
Okay, two more for you, Elise. What if we need to move items from one category to another?
So if you need to move items from one category to another, you would take your most, you know, the latest budget form that you have. I have them all sitting, and when you send in your request forms, I pull up the latest one I have. If you have to make a change, then I guess I would like clarification on the question. Is the change because you noticed when you were doing your reimbursement form something didn't match? If that's the situation, align your budget to your reimbursement form and send me an attachment of your Excel budget in with it, and you know, and let me know, hey, we had to move some money around because I put in 50 cents when I meant 99 cents and that kind of thing. But always also always keep an eye on that, your final request amount that was reported. You can't access, I mean, most of you zeroed out, which is good, but just keep an eye on that and make sure it stays zero if you zeroed out. And then if you didn't access all of it, you didn't request all of it, you won't be able to dip into it later. So keep an eye on all that. That budget is very important. It's going to change. It'll come back and forth between you and me multiple times until you're finished spending down. And it's akin to your Bible, and then while you're writing your sermon or whatever in your request form, you have to refer back and make sure things match up. That's why I suggest 2 screens. Look at it together.
Okay, I'll do one more and then we'll move on and let Alan get started. It said, okay, David and Matthew stated that if an individual line goes over the budgeted amount, we simply needed to list the line that we wish to take those overage funds from. Is that still valid?
I don't know. Is David Malonte on here? That was before my time. I'm not familiar with that. So that may be something, if it's in the chat.
Elise, I think that's just referring to them keeping track of if they have to get money from one category to make up another category when we know the actual expenses. So, you know, if they have to borrow from category 5 to supplement something in category 6 or whatever.
Yes, you can do that. What you are not supposed to do and shouldn't do is just add in something new or put on a request form. I've had this occur. Put on a request form something that's not on your approved budget. You don't, wouldn't do that. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, Katie, you want to go ahead and let Alan get started?
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, our let me go back to the slideshow here. As I mentioned, our reimbursement payment process has that our budget folks, accounting folks, they pick up the request that Elise has approved. They know that at this point that you have money in your budget to cover that request. Now they're going to look at the request from the standpoint of, does the documentation that you supplied support paying that? In other words, do we have the necessary receipts, canceled checks, credit card statements, whatever, that will allow us to go ahead and make that reimbursement payment and generate asset tags if necessary. So, Alan, I've got an example up here of a credit card statement. This is for a request. Let me bring that request up. That might be helpful too. Okay. Here's a request form that we received, and all of these amounts, if you can see down here at the bottom, have been approved by Elise, and now she has sent it over to Alan to be paid. Alan?
Thank you, Kay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's enjoying their summer. So yes, once the reimbursement request gets to my group, we are going to audit it from a standpoint of the receipts and what documentation that you have provided to show that you've received the items and you've paid for the items. And I know there's a lot of confusion about this. What do I need to provide? What do I not need to provide? And we've had to go back and forth on this a couple of different times with information that we're getting from USAID and we're getting from our internal groups on how we want to audit this. So some examples of what we are going to look at is your receipts / invoices that you provide to show what items you purchased, and then documentation to show that you actually paid for the items. This could be credit card statements, it could be copies of clear checks, it could be copies of bank statements. Those are the three main things that we're going to request. Now, if you are ordering something from Amazon and you're seeking reimbursement for that, Amazon is a good example of a company that you pay online with a credit card on Amazon, they will invoice you once the item ships. And it will have the last 4 digits of the card number that you used at the bottom of the invoice or receipt. And that is sufficient. But if your invoice does not have payment information, and it's not, basically not Amazon, we are not going to accept anything other than Amazon receipts like that. If it is just an invoice, you're going to have to also provide something that shows that you actually paid for that item. Credit card statement, copy of the clear check, or a bank statement. Okay, so in this example here, the reimbursement request and the receipts all matched, and they also provided a copy of a credit card statement, as well as in this reimbursement they paid different ways. Part of it was paid credit card, part of it was paid with a check, so they supplied copies of the clear checks as well as credit card statements. So what we're looking for from an auditing standpoint is you provided proof, dollar amount proof, company proof that you actually paid that dollar amount to that company that you're seeking reimbursement for, and your invoice amount, your invoices add up to that amount that you're showing that you paid. Okay, and that's very important from us from an auditing standpoint. But because we actually have to look at this from an eye that if we were called into court or into an auditor's office, could we back up what we approved in your reimbursement request? So we have to have that backup documentation to protect us as well as you. Okay. Kay, do you think that covers reimbursement, or do you want me to go in further on reimbursement?
I think we got the two here, school outfitters, the exact amount on the Chase, and then I showed the bank statement that showed the payment for the other $3,611 that is on that request.
We do have some questions on reimbursement. Do you want to go ahead and take those?
Yeah, let's
Yes,
take
ma'am.
a couple.
Okay, do we have an ETA on reimbursement turnaround?
Okay, so reimbursement turnaround is really going to vary, and it's going to vary for a couple of different reasons. Number one, in order to get to my group, it has to be approved by Elisa's group first, and she's been concentrating on budget approvals versus reimbursement and procurement requests at this time. So once it passes her group and gets to me, then we have to review what has been provided, the receipts, packing slips, invoices, credit card statements, bank statements. If any of that is missing, then we have to reach out to the school individually and request those items. So that delays when we can process the reimbursement. So if there's any back and forth that has to occur, that only delays things. But once it gets to our group, turnaround time for us is we are trying to hold a net 30 days because we are, as a state, we pay everything net 30 days from the time that we receive it. So we are trying to do net 30 days turnaround once it gets to our group for reimbursement as well.
Okay, and then a couple of people are just asking like about notification, like will they receive any indication where that is, where the process, is at? Like when Elise sends it on to you, are they notified, or anything like that?
They are CC'd. I
Okay.
CC everyone, and I CC the person who sent in the request form along with the completed approved request form, the DPR form, when I send that over to Michelle and Alan.
And then we CC the school as well when the payment has been processed with that payment document number as well.
Okay, and then other questions, they're around credit card statements and things like that, so I think you've covered that. I think we're ready to move on, Kay.
Okay. Let's take a look at another reimbursement, if that's okay.
Sure.
Here is a reimbursement request form, again from St. Thomas. And Alan, you can talk a little bit about this one.
Okay, so this one was for technology. Majority of it was technology, and kind of the same instance. You have receipts, invoices that were provided as documentation to show what they purchased, and that the dollar amounts match their that what is on their Excel reimbursement request sheet, and then they provided as well documentation to show that they actually paid for the items, credit card statements, bank statements, copies of canceled checks, things like that. They went as far as to go through and highlight off of their bank statement and credit card statement where those items were and redacted everything else that we did not need to see. And this is perfectly acceptable, perfectly fine. We don't care about everything else that you bought, only the items that you're seeking reimbursement for. Now, in this instance, something that we are going to deal with to go back to the question of I've submitted a reimbursement request and I haven't heard anything. How long is the turnaround? Currently, right now, we are dealing with an issue with inventory tags and inventory items for technology or items that are $500 or bigger that are equipment or inventoriable. We are having to hold those right now, but we do not plan on holding those much longer.
And the reason we're holding those at this time is that our supplier has not been able to get the tags, get those printed. We understand that yesterday they were able to place an order for the tags, and hopefully they will be in this week, and it usually takes us a week to get them. So we're saying our little prayers here that by next week we'll be able to generate those tags and make those and get those payments out the door. There are payments ready to go, simply waiting on the inventory tags at this time. So.
And we do have some more questions on receipts and things like that. So do you want to go ahead and take those?
Please.
Is a receipt stating the school name and email address showing the amount paid enough?
No. Something else is going to have to be included with that. It's going to need a verification funding-wise, bank-related, either a credit card statement, a banking statement, or a copy of a canceled check to show that that was actually paid for.
Okay, excluding Amazon, is a copy of an invoice good enough, or do we need to submit a copy of the canceled check? I think we've covered that. So no reimbursements have been processed or will be processed because Elisa's group is still working on budgets. When will that transition? So I think there's some confusion there.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So probably about middle of last week, I finished with going over all the budgets and making sure that things are legal. And I started processing requests for reimbursement and some procurement ones, and have gotten those sent over to Alan. So now that as I get finished with the budgets, I'll be able to dive in deeper on your request forms and things of that nature. So it should start moving more quickly at this point. I won't have to focus as much on the budgets is what I'm trying to say. I'll be able to dive into the 2 mailboxes for you and get that moving.
Correct. And I apologize if I was not clear on that.
Okay, was that up to 30 days for reimbursement?
Once it gets to Alan is what I understood him to say, but I'll let him.
That is correct.
Okay. So if we have already sent in something that we now know needs more verification of payment, what do we do?
They have two options that I see. They can either wait for us to reach out to them, or they can go ahead and send that additional documentation in to Elise to process through.
So if you're going to send me additional documentation, I would respectfully request, because I'm working with 135 schools with multiple requests, that you could find your old email and forward it to me, and then attach the piece of documentation you missed so I have it all together again, and that'll help me move faster.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you.
Okay, and I don't know if we need to, this sounds like another one that we've addressed, but I'll read it. An email from David on June 1st said that we could handwrite the check number and date on the invoice, and that was sufficient. So it sounds like I need to send you more information for the reimbursement request I have already submitted. And that would be yes. We do need some banking information. We need copies of bank statements or things like that Alan's already addressed. And I think that catches us up. I think we're ready to move on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I do want to apologize that we are learning things about what the program needs as we go along, and if it feels like that we changed the rules partway through the game, I do apologize for that. But you know, we try to keep the end goal in sight, and we want to make sure that we keep both you as the school and us as the state agency out of any federal hot water should that ever decide to come our way. So again, thank you for your patience, and we will get smoother as we go along. Okay. So with respect to the procurement process, that is a different request form. It has, if you look on our webpage, the procurement has a blue banner at the top. That will go to the procurement mailbox, and it goes through the same validation request that Elise talked about before, and she will send the approved procurement request as long as it matches up with the budget. She'll send that approved request on over to Alan's mailbox. And I've got an example of a procurement we might want to look at. Alan, you want to talk a little bit about the procurement process?
Sure. Kay, can you zoom in on that just a little bit?
Can I zoom in on that a little bit? That may be like next to impossible because, let's see here. This is a PDF of the original form. So if I don't know if I even have the original request in here. Let's see if I got that. No, I sure don't.
Okay. So the other side of this is the procurement side. And the procurement side is going to be a little different than what anybody is used to. So at the state government level, we don't have the options to go out just to wherever and buy what you are requesting of us. We have to utilize state master agreements first. And if it is not on state master agreement, then we have to do something else. We either have to put out a bid, and again, a dollar amount will determine some of this. If you're asking for $2,000 or $3,000 worth of items, then that may be something that we can purchase under our small purchase authority. But if you are requesting tens of thousands of dollars of items, that is going to be something that we are going to have to use our master agreements for, or we are going to have to put out a competitive bid to get those items for you. And competitive bids can take a certain amount of times depending on the complexity of what you're asking for, if it's technology related versus a consumer-based commodity type of item, or if it's some type of a service. Okay, so in dealing with your requests, in your procurement requests, you're going to be contacted by one of my staff and talk about what you have asked for. Okay, because our job is to try to get you as close to apples of what you have requested as possible. But that in every scenario is going to be different. Basically, every procurement is going to have to be handled as its own situation. So that being said, we will reach out to you and say, yes, you have requested this particular type of Chromebook, this model. We do not have that model on master agreement. However, we can get you this. Will this meet your need? This Chromebook, for example, may be a little bit more expensive because it is a little bit different. Most of the items, and I'm just using technology as an example because technology has been a big, broad part of what we've been asked for up to this point. Most of the technology contracts that we are going to have are going to be educational-based types of contracts. So a computer or laptop or Chromebook that we are going to have on contract is not going to be exact to what you can go on Amazon or Walmart and buy. Ours are going to be a little bit different because they're driven towards an educational-based device. Okay, so there's going to be some back and forth that occurs when it comes to procurement to make sure that we're getting you what you need, and that if it does cost more money, that you are okay with that. We're not going to order anything without your okay first. Okay. There's going to be instances when it comes to procurement that we have never done this before. We have one school right now that we are purchasing a modular classroom, trying to purchase a modular classroom or lease a modular classroom. This has been something that we're kind of starting from the ground up. We've never done this before. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that's going to go into this type of procurement. Okay. Another type of procurement that has been big requested of, or at least Elise and I have contacted several times about this, is professional development for your teachers. That is considered a personal service with the state of Kentucky. And the state of Kentucky has a $0 threshold when it comes to personal service. So if you're going to have a company come in and provide a training for your teachers, and they're setting foot on your soil, on your classroom, and leading at some type of a training, then that is considered a personal service, and that is something we would have to do as a competitive bidding process. Okay, and the competitive bidding process can range 2 to 4 months, just depending on the complexity of it and what we're trying to purchase you. Okay. This particular procurement that you have in front of you right now is for 10 Surface books and 10 extended warranties that were included into the request. This request went very quickly because the vendor that they had reached out to, SHI, is one of our contracted vendors. So it was a simple change over to change their quote from the school to put our name on it, and then we could order it directly from our contracted vendor. So if you are one of the things that we will have the conversation back and forth about is you may submit a quote from Amazon or submit a quote from a local company to you. We can reach you back out and say, here's a company that we are contracted with. This is the company that we're going to be working through, and we can provide you that information. But procurement's turnaround time, again, is going to vary because if the item is on contract for us or it's not on contract for us, if it's something that we're going to have to do a competitive bid process to award, and also the availability of the vendors are going to be different. We can order it today, but it may not be available. It may be on back order. So we may have to be waiting weeks, if not months, for items, especially technology related. Okay. Okay, does that cover procurement pretty well?
So just a quick question, Alan. On this particular procurement that the school asked KDE to do the procurement, for these particular items, they could have done that themselves and gotten a reimbursement?
That is correct.
So don't, if you decide to go down that path and buy items yourself, make those procurements yourself, make sure that you allow for plenty of leeway on getting reimbursed. We don't want anybody to get into a problem with your vendor that you couldn't make a payment to them because you're waiting on KDE to make a payment back to you because we didn't get your receipt or whatever the deal is. So just be very careful when you weigh those decisions about, do I procure or do I procure myself, or do I get KDE to do that procurement for me? And we've seen some dollar amounts that are pretty significant that you might not be able to cover internally, that you would want KDE to do that purchasing for you. So just make sure that you understand, A, if there's a difference in cost, and B, can I manage that cash flow? Okay. Any other questions, Nicole, coming through?
I don't believe so. I believe we've answered all that we have.
So that last purchase was a good example of a procurement that triggers the inventory process. So when a payment is made that triggers a fixed asset notification, our inventory management people will make sure that you are given the asset tags and that there is a spreadsheet that you have to fill out that matches up your tag numbers with a particular item. So let me give you a quick example of so here is the equipment assignment record and receipt. When you get the tag, there will be a number on there. Just it might start with ED 00001. It could, whatever series of numbers it is, you list the item that you're going to put that tag on, and if you buy 20 laptops, you're going to have 20 numbers utilized, and you'll fill out 20 of these line items on the spreadsheet. You'll capture model number, serial number, and just a brief description. The idea here is that should an audit ever occur, that we would be able to match up the item with the property tag, and we know what the general cost of that particular item was. Also, when you are introduced to the inventory process the first time, you will also complete the inventory acknowledgement form, which indicates that you understand that you have to track the item, that it's your responsibility to notify KDE if the item becomes lost or stolen, and that you understand about the annual inventory process. KDE will generate a report, mail it to your inventory custodian to acknowledge that those items are still present on site, and return that back to KDE. So that way we can keep track and keep everybody in line with what the expectations are. If an item becomes lost, stolen, or destroyed, there will be a form that you can fill out to let us know about that as well. So, you know, it's the government. You will have some paperwork to do, and the idea is just to make sure that we're transparent and that everybody knows where the goods are that have been purchased. Okay. This is what the asset tag will look like. It's about the size of a small Band-Aid. It is a polymer material. It's not a paper tag, but it is polymer material that you will stick to the item in a place where it can be easily found. It doesn't have to be prominently displayed. You could put it on the back or the bottom of a laptop or wherever, but it just gives us a way to make sure that we can track those. This is what we're waiting on from our supplier, and hopefully they will be here soon. I discussed the EANS acknowledgement form, and that you've got the equipment assignment record and receipt form, that you'll manage those. Okay, any questions on inventory, Nicole?
No, a couple are surrounding like the timeline on the procurement orders and things like that, but I thought you may want to just go ahead. I don't want us to run out of time, you know, if you want to go ahead and cover staffing. Okay.
So I am pleased today to take the opportunity to announce that we do have a contract in place with our staffing partner, OVEC, the Ohio Valley Educational Co-op, and we have a couple of representatives of that group who are on the call today to get a flavor of what your requests and concerns are relative to the other parts of this process. So from a staffing standpoint, as you know, that is a service that has to be procured by the state agency or by our designated agent, which in this case will be OVEC. The process for making a staffing request is going to be very similar to making other requests. You will fill out the staffing request form. I'll show you that in just a second. That will go to the procurement mailbox since it is a procurable service. Elise will again evaluate your staffing request with respect to your budget. Is it in the budget? Do you have sufficient funds to cover that staffing request? and make sure that when you consider that budgeted amount, that not only do we need to pay the person whatever the wage is agreed upon, but there very likely will be some degree of fringe benefits, taxes, other items that may have to be paid on behalf of that. We generally think somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15% might be considered applicable for, talking about fringe relative to payroll for those folks. Once Elise approves the acquisition of that staffing person, she will send that request to OVEC, and they will advertise for that position and attract candidates that they can vet and then refer to you for the completion of that process. So the staffing request form, if I can show you just a quick example of that, we'll have an orange banner at the top. Again, it has instructions on the first tab that will tell you how to fill this out, but it does look pretty much the same. There will be categories that you need to identify in terms of your budget. There's only 3 that refer to staffing, so that limits your choice a little bit there. But you may be looking for a math teacher, maybe you need 3 math teachers. Whatever position you're looking for, write that out, short description, and what hours you estimate that person will be involved for the school year. That will give us then a total amount to work with. The second part of this staffing request is that you actually fill out position information that will help OVEC match up what you need with what candidates are available. And this is like position descriptions that you are familiar with. There's a place for you to describe any education requirements that you have for that position. If it's an instructional aide, perhaps you need a high school diploma, but if you're actually looking for a teacher and you want a teacher with master's degree certification or something like that, you can list that in here. If you are looking, for example, for health worker, you might want a certified nurse, but perhaps a nurse's aide might work for you. So whatever education, certification, and experience requirements that you are looking for, you should list those here, as well as the job duties. Each position on the staffing request form should have a position detail tab associated with it. So there are 10 positions available. There are 10 blank position detail tabs available for whatever positions you request. And certainly if you request 3 teachers and the position detail is the same, you can cut and paste as you see fit. The idea is to provide as much information as possible to help OVEC align your needs with whatever resources become available. I will also mention that OVEC is going to have a portal directly on their website that anyone that you know of who is interested in filling position that you may have at your school or that may be available at another school. If you know of anyone that is interested in applying, we will make that portal information available just as soon as they get that set up, so that they will be the recipient of job applications. They're going to then receive these job requests and they're going to match those up, get back to you about a final decision on who will help your school out in that particular fashion. So as part of the staffing request process, you will complete both tabs of the staffing request form. And remember, one position detail tab per position requested. You can do up to 10 to a form. Submit that to the KDE procurement request mailbox. We'll get it approved, get it over to OVEC. Now the last part of the process is how we get those people paid, right? So they will be paid through OVEC based on OVEC's time reporting application and your approval as the supervising teacher or administrator. So we'll have more information about those details as they are put in place. So expect, I think we've got about 55 of our 135 schools have requested staffing. So we'll be reaching out to those schools when we have more information about how this process will work. Specific forms, specific timing, that sort of stuff. So right now we're looking for
Okay, since we just have a couple minutes left, do you want to take a couple of the questions regarding staffing?
Sure.
Okay, one is, what if we already have someone in mind? Do we just direct them to OVEC?
Yes, you will still need to fill out the request, and as part of the process, when you're thinking about it, go ahead and have that person sign up through the OVEC portal, and we will provide you with that information so that you can direct them to that particular portal to do their online application system.
Okay, and then here's someone, looks like they have some concerns. It says, is it appropriate that an organization would hire someone for our school that may not be an appropriate fit?
So they will not actually be hiring until you as the supervising administrator or teacher approve that person. So you will have the right to review possible candidates and make a selection.
Can a school nurse be used? Didn't clarify, that's all I've got.
So
School
if you
nurse,
already,
school
if
nurse
you
is
already
category
have some,
7.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Kate. School nurse is category 7 to help administer COVID and that kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Right. But if you already have a school nurse on staff, this is not staff payroll. We can't pay your payroll. If you are getting additional staff to deal with that, then yes, you can acquire a school nurse to deal with COVID.
Okay, and it looks like we're on the hour, so we can address these questions. We can respond, after today's webinar. We did have one request for the slides, asking if they would be made available.
I have no reason to think why not. We can stick the slide deck with the recording when we make that available. Okay. My contact information as project manager is here. My role is to take your questions and either find you an answer or get someone who does have the answer back in touch with you, so I can chase down your questions and get answers to those. My phone number is on there as well. Please leave a message if I'm not available to answer immediately. So k.kennedy2@education.ky.gov. All right. I appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. Hope we didn't generate more questions than we resolved, but we're happy to have this opportunity to talk to you. And as we go forward and see the need to have that conversation about staffing requests, we'll schedule another webinar, or as other questions or concerns develop that we need to talk about, we will reach out to you for additional information sessions. And with that, I think we'll call it an afternoon, and everybody have a good evening.
Thanks, Kay.
Thanks, Kay.